Hello everyone, day 2 here in Chicago. Lalakad-lakad lang kami dito sa downtown. Nakita namin yung biggest Starbucks in the world. Naantay lang namin si NJ. Mag-aano kami, architecture boat ride. Punta kami sa architecture boat ride. Kasi may tubig. Dito na kami ngayon sa Navy Pier. Sasakay kami dito sa architecture boat ride.
Maraming building dyan. Kumaran nyo yun, videoan nyo yun.
Kunti lang pala tao. Dito na kami ngayon. Masakay na kami sa boat. Dito kami sa may likod banda. Nakainom na ng gata si baby girl. Kunti lang yung iniinom muna niya na
Hindi siya
milk.
nag-drink ng water kanina.
Ilang minutes na lang. Nalarga na rin kami guys. 12:30 yung flight. Yeah, we're back there mga drinks.
Magnificent architecture all up and down the Chicago River kind of makes this river one giant outdoor, very, very open air. I first came out to visit Chicago in 2008. When I first came out to this place, it was 17 degrees. That is because my job today is to tell you about the amazing architecture of the city of Chicago, both natural and man-made. If I was going to do that in the most straightforward way possible, I would start 10,000 years ago, the creation of the Great Lakes and the Chicago River itself. The already named Doctor Who episode, or perhaps Quantum Leap. At the end of the tour, for now I'm going to throw it all the way back to the very beginning, 10,000 years ago, around the end of the last Ice Age. As the curtain comes up on the line, one of the original place names here is something like Chicago, which roughly translates to stinky onions because of the water. Accurate, literal translation of the name Chicago would be, man, that place really stinks. The exclamation, man! Dug a whole bunch of canals down the south branch of the Chicago River connecting it to the Des Plaines River, which sits at a lower elevation. Year 1924, with this white building off the right-hand side of the boat, it's got a clock tower up on top of it. That is the Wrigley Building. And if you were looking up at the Wrigley Building and thinking, wow, that looks kind of fancy for 1924, that's just over 100 years ago, and this looks a bit older than that. It looks kind of like an old church, actually. Well, that's on purpose. This is a style called Spanish Revivalism. It is, of course, Trump International Hotel and Tower, which is a great example of a more recent architectural style called contextualism. If you look up the side of the building, you'll see 3 flat patios ascending the tower called setbacks. Each one of these setbacks corresponds with the height of one of the other buildings around Trump Tower. The first setback is the same height as the roof of the Wrigley Building under the corn cobs. Their actual name is, I know that Anish Kapoor, the designer of the Cloud Gate sculpture down at Millennium Park, really hates it when we here in Chicago call it the Beam. But it looks. And underneath that parking structure, you've got things like a steakhouse, a seafood joint, they have a bowling alley in there. Underneath it all, there's a place for you to park your yacht. Truly, it's a city within a city, everything you could possibly need. At the time of the passage of the Clean Water Act, there were only 7 species of fish that could survive in the Chicago River. But we only started building it at the turn of the millennium. It was completed in 2016. It's a great example of Chicago continuing to work on itself and improve itself over time. It's a popular spot to eat your lunch on a lovely spring day like this. Another great example of Chicago moving through time is this building coming up on the left-hand side of the boat. Kind of looks like 2 buildings smashed together. This first section on the left-hand side is from the 1920s. It's our first example of Art Deco architecture on the tour. Some elements of Art Deco architecture include deep inset windows, long vertical lines that draw the eye upward, and the repeated machine-cut patterning etched into the side of the building. But after that black dividing line, that repeated machine-cut patterning goes away. That is a postmodern section of the building from the 1980s, but it respects the same line established by the Art Deco. Now, as we make our turn up the north branch of the Chicago River, I'm going to keep us in the distant past. I'm going to tell you a bit about the oldest building that you can see today on this architecture tour. That is that pink brick building. The most recent of these river cottages to sell went for $2.25 billion.
And 모든 혼란스러운 signals 어디로 가는지 몰라 내 옆에 너만 있으면 되는데 근데 가끔은 나도 묻게 돼 대고하게 lives like a fool 또 바보처럼 행동하네 나 흥분하지 않겠다고 애쓰면서도 네가 외로웠던 거 몰랐어 서로 못된 말을 뱉어 만나게 돼
Less is more. These Vanderbilt firmly believed that form follows function. So, what is the function of an office building? Well, it has to have space inside it for a bunch of cubicles. So by moving the steel supports to the outside of the building and leaving them exposed, you free up space inside for those offices and cubicles to be stacked. There are companies that were based here.
Just post
Companies
office.
like Marshall Field & Co. or Sears and Roebuck. Sears is another big Chicago name. A third of the city was homeless, and the modern equivalent of $8 billion in damage had been done. Chicago was destroyed. The city started to rebuild itself almost immediately. Aid poured in from all over the country, and indeed all over the world. Used at night, so buildings lit up especially bright in the evening, helping give rise to the name, the White City. There is still one building from 1893 in the White City, all the way down there at Jackson Park, that you can go and visit. It was originally the Palace. Daniel Burnham was one of the founders of something called the City Beautiful movement, a philosophy that said living and working around beautiful spaces and buildings made people's lives better. They want to be better people, even. Of course, what makes a building beautiful means different things to different folks. Off the right-hand side of the boat, we have this curvy-looking building called River City, Art Deco Tower. That is the Roman goddess Ceres, the goddess of agriculture. She actually stands over 30 feet tall. And the reason the Roman goddess of agriculture is up there is that is the Chicago Board of Trade, where they sold agricultural stock. The name Ceres is the root of a few words that we still use today. Words like cereal, made from grain, and cerveza, also made from grain. That crown of lights, when it first lit up, was so bright that it was confusing migratory birds who thought it was the moon, which they used to navigate, and they were getting lost. This turned into a pretty grisly scene. Some of those birds were dying of exhaustion at the base of the tower. An example of black box modernism has a name. That name is spelt W-I-L-L-I-S. We have a kind of funny way of pronouncing that here in Chicago. We pronounce that Sears. That is the Sears Tower. I'm told on a windy day like today up there, you can see the water in the toilets sloshing back and forth in their bowls like little mini inertial slosh dampers. If I were to ask you, which is better, New York style or Chicago deep dish pizza, the correct answer would be that it's a trick question because nobody cares. Nobody cares. You can eat whatever style of pizza you like. Now, we love a deep dish pizza here in Chicago. They are delicious. Reed Murdoch Center has a fraught history with Daniel Burnham's 1909 plan of Chicago. That plan called for the widening of LaSalle Street, this next bridge we're about to pass under. The Reed Murdoch Center was already here. And it's funny that it looks like a champagne bottle because it was constructed during Prohibition, when you could not get an alcoholic drink in the United States. At least, not legally. The Carbide and Carbon building had the last laugh. They recently opened up a cocktail bar up towards the top of that building, and that's real 24 karat gold up there. It's beaten thinner than the thickness of one of your fingernails. The top of it. It's also every 9-year-old's favorite architectural feature to say. They are called flying buttresses. Those arches that cascade off the top of the building and down the outside. Pointe du Sable, a Haitian man, built his trading post along the original shoreline of Lake Michigan, pressed together. This is a recent addition to the Chicago skyline. The St. Regis opened just a couple of years ago by another local Chicago architect named Jeannie Gang. The St. Regis is the third tallest building in Chicago, behind Trump Tower and the Sears Tower. Rise building on the east side of Lakeshore Drive. And that's because there's another Chicago zoning law that says you're not supposed to build high-rise buildings on the east side of Lakeshore Drive. Off the left-hand side of the boat, you can see Navy Pier, which sticks out into the lake. Navy Pier has a fascinating history. It's been all sorts of different things. It was a barracks during World War I. During World War II, it was a training area for Navy pilots. Nowadays, Navy Pier is home to things like the Chicago Shakespeare Theater, the Chicago Children's Museum. So thank you for joining us, and to prove that this has been a time travel adventure, if you check your phones and watches, you'll see that it's over 1 hour since you first came on board, and that is technically time travel. Thank you all so much again. Welcome back to the city of Chicago. Hold on to your seats for just a moment more, and I will see you at the top of the way.
Mga kaibigan, dahil po nga pa, para mas madaming papasyalan kayo sa...
Mahangin pa, nakakaano.
Kasi, dahil niya po dun sa ano, hindi sabi ko kami.
Lisensya po, ano?
Alright guys, tapos na kayo mag-tour. Tapos na rin kayo mag-limpad. Pa rin yung kamto kanina sa boat ride. Kami kumain sa may food court dito sa Navy Pier, Chinese Express.
Meet me where the meadows grow by the water hole. Lucid dreams of you and me. Sky high, busy life, I wanna live. Oh, muscle tight, early light, cleanse down jaw. Say my name or
you going? Where are you going, Brella? Are you going to go out shopping? Are you going to shop? Where are you going? Where are you going?